Good afternoon. Thanks very much for coming along to the first of two sessions this morning or this afternoon, on achieving net positive hospitality. The first session, I'm going to be in conversation with Glenn Madzik from the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and then we have a panel which he's going to run on straight afterwards. There will be time for questions in both parts of the sessions today. So I'm looking forward very much to hearing what Glenn has got to say. He's new in post, under a year, at the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. It's an organisation I've known since the International Hotels Environment Initiative, which was started by Prince Charles in the wake of the first Rio Conference in 1992. So we're in the 30th year of that stream of work, and we also happen to be in the 30th year of Arabian travel market. So it's a strange confluence of birthday events this year. We're still a long way away from 2030, perhaps. But the scientists tell us that by 2030, we're going to have made a lot more progress than we have so far. We need really to speed up with this notion of sustainability and taking responsibility. Glenn, would you like to join us on the stage? So Glenn, I'm going to sit down in a minute, but do you want just to explain about the history of the organisation? Started in 1993, if I remember rightly, became the International Hotel Environment Initiative, then Lyndall DeMarco made it the International Tourism Partnership, stole the word tourism for hospitality, and then it was turned back into the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, that's correct, Harold. You took all the thunder out of my historical overview of the Alliance. No, yes, currently the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance is in its third year of its new formation. It's a global charity made up of hospitality industry from around the world. In fact, right now we have over 50% of all the global hospitality sector as part of this alliance. But because it's a charity, our job is to support the entire movement within the hospitality sector when it comes to sustainability.
Glenn, okay. So, 7 million rooms, 50,000 hotels, 270 brands, still growing.
Still growing. We have Patrick O'Meara here in the audience, who's our Director of Business. Our job is we want to continue to grow the conversation at the table within the Alliance. And this is a powerful group of its convening power at the C-suite level, again, engaging with sustainability. It's really important if we really want to build a movement and a practical outcome for sustainability, we need a much larger audience. And I will say, in the last year alone, we've more than tripled in size. So obviously, within the conversation within sustainability at the hospitality level, it is really starting to take hold, and we want to keep that momentum alive.
So the growth in the membership, is that largely down to Patrick?
Well, yes, Patrick, he's the man. You want to see this guy right out here. But I would say, our board of directors who have been very aggressive in the thinking as well and starting to grow the conversation. We've got a fabulous team back at the office. But I will say, I think it's really come from 4 key pillars of activity. That obviously there's regulation, and regulators are expecting more from the hospitality industry. The shareholders, obviously, are expecting more and demanding more if they look at their investment and how they invest their dollars. We're also seeing the customer, of course, You know, Booking.com's latest assessment, 76% of those customers are now looking for sustainability when making a decision on where to stay. And obviously in the business travel arena, which is really driving that conversation. But I'd say the fourth real important pillar here, which is affecting all these brands and all the companies around the world, is the employee of the future is expecting that the hotel companies have a higher purpose. And wherever they want to work. And what we saw coming out of the pandemic was we lost 40% of our workforce. We've regained 20% back, but there's 20% that will never come back. So the point of this factor is we need to stand at a higher plane as an industry in order to attract that employee of the future. And sustainability for people, planet, place, and prosperity, which I know we'll talk more about, are key pillars of attracting those labor force of the future back.
Just to go off on a side issue for a minute, because you in a way, you started it running. One of the things that's always frustrated me about the hospitality industry is the amount of effort that goes into training often really first-class hospitality and social skills. And I'm often told in Dubai that every time a woman gets skilled enough to take the front desk role, somebody from a financial services company comes along and offers them more money. And one of the things the hospitality industry, I think, has been really poor at doing is recording where staff who leave move on to. I mean, during COVID, people left and they got often higher rates of pay. But in the normal situation, people often leave for higher rates of pay, but outside the industry, and you don't claim any credit for that. Is that something you think the Hospitality Alliance could address?
Well, in fact, we're having conversations around fair pay and fair wages within the industry. That will be a key pillar of the Alliance efforts. And certainly we would do those kind of assessments. But, you know, we have to stand for, again, a higher purpose. If the industry stands for a higher purpose, it may be less attractive for those folks to move to another sector because it's not all driven by money anymore.
No.
It is a much more balanced work-life balance is also very important in the conversation. And quite frankly, working in the industry can be a very incredible experience.
Yeah, and it's still a very open industry, isn't it, where people can join quite low-skilled work and work their way up through the hotel to a senior position. Most of the GMs have done that effectively. But let me just push the point again, Glenn. It does seem to me that the industry does a lot of training on behalf of other sectors and doesn't get any credit for it. And I think that's something that would be worth putting right by just collecting that data of where people leave to go to. Because the assumption is they left because of low pay, but often they're leaving because they can't get progression in the industry and they look for a higher paid employment elsewhere. Which is a perfectly natural thing, but you should be getting the credit for the training that you've done.
Well, I will say I think the hospitality industry overall on this topic has done a poor job at communicating its successes, and this is one of those factors for sure.
So Glenn, looking at this slide that you and I have in front of us and it's behind us, how are you feeling about being responsible for the sustainability of half the hotel rooms in the world?
Well, I don't have any, I don't look at it that way. I look at every one of these companies, they have really qualified professionals that are being hired and engaging within, these are the true leaders. The important point of this fact, though, is we need to work together to solve these issues. You can't do this in a silo. You got to be able to work together in order to tackle the bigger issues ahead. And I will say many of those companies have really shown that effort.
Are you suggesting, Glenn, that basically they're all pretty much in the same place moving forward?
No, not at all. No. You know, when I look at Iberostar, for example, that sees there, they have over 30 people working in sustainability at corporate headquarters. They're looking at all aspects of it, from biodiversity to carbon to waste, and they're actually engaging and helping others in that effort. And I will say, if you look at everybody there, they're actually talking about this in a pre-competitive conversation, which wasn't normal. They always saw that as maybe their competitive edge in order to succeed. But everybody there has been very open at sharing their proprietary information and their intellectual property with each other which is, again, I think we're at an unprecedented time in the industry, because I would say we don't have a long history of that kind of relationship, and seeing that happen, it's been great.
So what's your take, Glenn, on how that transition happened? Because it certainly wasn't the case with the old ITP, but it obviously is the case. Now that you're a UK registered charity, the members are now called donors on the website. That's a massive change when you think about it. I assume that still, when Patrick is out there recruiting new hotels, they're saying, well, what's the membership benefit? But in fact, they've become donors, haven't they? And that's a very different position to be in.
It's really a paradigm shift of thinking, because it used to be a member organization, as you pointed out. And we wanted to showcase, because we're a registered charity, and our job is to disperse our information that we collect to the entire industry free of charge, then we have to indicate that these folks are donors to the bigger cause. And that having that happen, it enabled a platform for people to see this as a pre-competitive conversation. Fundamentally, our purpose and belief is that tourism and hospitality is a privilege and not a right. So when we think about that, it is a major paradigm shift when you think about that in a respective community. I used to be in community economic development, and we would go out and try to attract a hotel to our community. And we'd do everything we could to do that. And that hotel company thought they carried all the power. But in fact, in order to succeed in hotel business, they have to be firmly integrated within the community and seen as a contributor to the community, not an extractor. Which leads us to, of course, this fundamental philosophy of net positive hospitality.
I'm going to come back to that shortly, Glenn, I promise. But I want to just push you on why you think you're qualified to do this.
Why I'm qualified? Well, I'm Canadian. I just moved to London about 10 months ago, enjoying it, loving it, lots of shows, just drinking in the culture. My background, my family owned hotels across Western Canada when I was a young person, so I had no choice to be in there. And then I worked in destination management. And one of the areas that I was very grateful to work in was in British Columbia, the interior of British Columbia and the Thompson-Okanagan region, where we took a region of 4,000 members and 90 communities, and we got them all agree. Every business and every community agreed to a common cause, which of course can be a very difficult undertaking, because that could be, tourism can be a little bit like herding cats, right? So it's a bit of a thing to get everybody to agree to a common vision. And what we did there was we agreed that sustainability was our future. We had to work very closely with our Indigenous communities and really adopted the Indigenous philosophy of, embracing Mother Earth. And ultimately, it distinguished the region globally as one of the leaders in sustainability and repositioned it as a prominent destination. Well, I felt very passionate about being part of something, a real global movement, and being part of the hospitality industry on a global scale has been a great honor, and that's what brought me here.
So after your interview, when you were, after all, you didn't appoint yourself, they appointed you, so it's their responsibility. But after the interview, did they tell you why they gave you the job?
They wanted to see the organization evolve into the global leader and voice of net positive hospitality, which meant that we had to grow the conversation. We had to be bold in our ambition, and we take that. So they saw that what we did in where I come from, and see if that could be applied here.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a small town, and even getting the tourism businesses in that small town to work together is difficult. I understand exactly the herding cats analogy that you've used, and I suspect the fact that you've done that across British Columbia was a big part of the reason why they hoped that you could do it for them. So we've had a year of very rapid growth in the numbers of members, and I've been really impressed, I must admit, by what's coming out in terms of the way this is being articulated, which brings us to the beginnings of net positive hospitality. But you talk a lot about responsibility in the context of this. Do you want to just say a bit, because you were famous in your previous job for winning the Responsible Tourism Awards, not I have to say from me, but in Canada quite a lot. Do you want to just say something about the connection between responsibility and net positive?
Well, responsibility is about giving back. And as you can see right here, it is about a regenerative solution. We're actually beyond this conversation of net zero and sustainability, because in order for us to start to turn the clock back on this 2030 and 2050 numbers that we need to hit, we need to actually be seen as a contributor and not an extractor as an industry. And that's why we as an industry, which I will say was one of the key reasons that attracted me to this job, because the industry adopted this principle of net positive thinking before I arrived. And that was a very attractive feature, because they said to me that they actually want to turn the corner as an industry, because the hospitality industry has been very, quite frankly, slow to react to change. And the pandemic required rapid change and being able to pivot to a new reality. And this shows that it can be done. And yes, we can be seen as a contributor. And I will say that ties directly to responsible thinking.
It does. But what occurs to me, Glenn, is that this is a big commitment. Giving back is going to be difficult, because in a sense what the industry has done is moved beyond the old CSR1, which was about charitable giving. Lots of the tourism industry is still there, but you've gone somewhere different with this, because this is about changing the way you do the business, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can see it's giving back to the destination. It's really important. The community for which the property sits, they have to be seen to be giving back to the destination. And quite frankly, we're saying this message because we want to send a market signal, not just to ourselves amongst our industry, but to all the other economic sectors out there to take us extraordinarily much more seriously. And one of the opportunities we have, we're working very closely with an organization, again, established by King Charles III, the Sustainable Markets Initiative, which sits us at the table as a hospitality industry together with agriculture, with the financial community, with aviation, to solve these conversations much more proactively between sectors. But I will say a lot of those sectors, they come and talk to me and they say, Glenn, you got a lot of work to do in your hospitality industry. We don't think you're far enough down the road, all these things. And I think it's important that we stand out in that conversation and set a very bold target to move forward to. And if we don't set the vision, we will never hit the vision. So we've set the vision. We've laid out a comprehensive pathway to get there. And I think we've got the tools to make it happen.
Just before we come on to this slide particularly, Glenn, it does seem to me that one of the big changes you've made, along presumably with the support of your board, is to recognise that the tourism and hospitality industries, and it isn't one industry, it's a whole mass of different industries, but that sector has actually lagged behind what's happening in other sectors. And it's a very brave step to actually step out from that and start to talk to people. So if you take the hydrogen thing, which I am very following very closely, we're beginning to see steel made using hydrogen. But the aviation industry, at least half of it, is still focused on using waste oil or biomass. They're not looking at the possibilities of hydrogen. How difficult is that going to be to sustain, do you think, going forward, this addressing your role of this sector against other sectors?
Well, it's about communication. And we, quite frankly, as an industry, talk too much to ourselves. And so we need to get outside ourselves. And we're sitting, like I say, side by side with the aviation leaders of the world, talking about our needs as well. And so our hope through that process is that we will see that change and that message comes completely through.
Of course, many of those companies are buying hospitality for their conferences and for their business travel. So that pressure has always been there, but you've mainstreamed it now.
Yes.
At the heart of what you're doing. Glenn, do you just want to say something about the 4 Ps? Because this very neatly sums up what you're about.
Exactly. These are the 4 pillars of net positive thinking. We have to have a positive in each one of these categories in order for it to be successful. And again, we've expanded our thinking from just people and planet, but to include place and prosperity. We're not in the philanthropic business in hospitality here. Obviously, this industry, as we can see all around us, is here to make money. But we need to make money not just for ourselves, but for the wider audience and our wider value chain. And that's the point of these 4 pillars, is really placing that. And we've mapped that across the ESG framework, because we need to, of course, speak in the language of business and the language of our investment community, and we have done just that.
Glenn, I don't think I've ever heard somebody, a leader in tourism, talk about not being in the philanthropy business before. But it is a very important point, I think. That whole thing that Porter started out of Harvard around creating shared value has to be where it is for the future.
Exactly.
Glenn, you have a piece, as I do, in the Arabian Travel Market Yearbook, in which you write about the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. And you talk about it being a long road. I just want to query that with you, because it seems to me the scientists are telling us we've got till about 2030. And at my age, that's a very short period of time, believe me. So I think it's a steep road rather than a short road. Do we disagree about this? Or
No, we don't disagree. No, we don't disagree. I think I was just being honest in terms of the activities that the industry needs to embark on when they think about this. But when we think about, we are running out of time. We talk about this always at the Alliance. We're running out of time for this conversation. So we have established a cross-section of committees and infrastructure to engage all the industry to really tackle the big issues like reporting, like the whole standards of effort of, because it's so complicated right now for industry to actually report on their activities, and just actually taking action, bold action. And I would say, I think so far in these 10 short months, as we are embark on a strategy launched next month, that will outline that specific effort of bold action.
Good. So this is the objective, a business that puts back more into society, the environment and the economy than it takes out. That's a bold claim, isn't it? Now, what I like about this particular graphic is it is steep.
Yes, it is.
Do you want to just say something about this one?
This is we have detailed a comprehensive pathway to net positive hospitality. And it's not just words on here. There's a whole background of materials that support each level of engagement. We've underpinned it with a series of benchmarks that are enabled those industry to actually see where they are on that journey, which is very easy and simple for them to engage with. And then we've developed a series of training materials, tools, and support to help the businesses get there ultimately. And one of the things we wanted to make sure is all the other frameworks and programs that are out there find their way into this pathway, whether it be WTTC's recently launched Basics program, which is that first step in the journey, to Travelist's initiative and their attributes, which find themselves in that second phase of the journey. Booking.com's attributes that enable a business to actually promote themselves online, find themselves in here. So the businesses find themselves the way through, but it does, by the time they get to that 4th level and being seen as a contributor, help that business get there. We have to, it's a bit of a seeing is believing action. A lot of businesses need to actually see what somebody else might be doing in order for them to embrace that within their respective business. And that's what we do, because we've been able to convene all the leaders, quite frankly, in the industry together, talking together, sharing with each other. It will be a catalyst for change across the larger value section. There's a lot of work that has to be done when it comes to particularly the supply chain. And there's a great opportunity here that the industry has as a leader to influence that supply chain. But that is going to be, when I talk about the long road ahead, while we have a short time to get there, there is a lot of work to be done, particularly on the supply chain conversation.
It seems to me, Glenn, that one of the issues for the hospitality industry in particular is that many hotels have their 3 stars or their gold standard for being certified sustainable. And you go into the hotel and this is a personal experience from Morocco, but many people have got these experiences. You go into the hotel room and the temperature's down at 13 degrees when it's 34 degrees outside. The TV's on telling me who I am. I don't yet have Alzheimer's as far as I know. And all the lights are on in the room. And you do the obvious thing, you open the door, you put the thermostat up to 24, which is a comfortable temperature to sleep at, turn the lights off, turn the TV off, you go out for supper, you come back and guess what? The lights are on, the TV's on again, telling me who I am in case I've forgotten, and the temperature's down at 13 degrees. So now I can't go to bed until I've managed to warm up the room. Now, that's undermined a lot of people's confidence in the certification process, hasn't it? How do you see that going forward, Glenn?
Well, bottom line is we're in the hospitality business, and so there is an evolution there. I mean, we as hoteliers want to feel that we're giving the best experience to that customer. And so we want to do these little things that you're alluding to, but now we have to shift our thinking to start to reflect and make their decisions. I was just in New York. I had a similar experience. There's a big plaque on the back of the wall saying that they're a sustainable hotel, and I'm proud to be staying at this hotel. A member who will remain nameless, but they press in my hands as I'm checking in 2 plastic bottles of water as a welcome. And a few years ago, that would have been seen as a very positive thing and positive message. But of course, once I saw that, no matter how much you tell me you're a green property, that left the building that moment. So there is a learning curve that needs to happen here, that we're going to see that fundamental shift over time. It's a long way to, there is a lot of work to be done there on training and educating and what that imagery is. But it's a juggling act that we have. We're in the hospitality business and we want to do that extra for the customer. But what they're seeing is that customer, as Vice mentioned earlier, 76% of them are saying they want to be able to see that it's a sustainable experience. And so we have to register that with those properties at the ground level.
We do at least now have fewer hotels with the A card up saying, please rescue the earth by not having your towels washed every day. We do see that less, but we still see that A card up alongside a shower, which is not even an aerated shower, which is extraordinary. And I think what the industry needs to wake up to is there are more and more young consumers particularly, and they're the business people who are on the road the whole time, who understand what constitutes sustainability in a building, partly because their own building probably has a higher standard than many hotels do still. So I think there's still a long way to go. Do you want to just talk about these core topics?
So as I mentioned before, within the pathway, we've mapped it across the ESG framework you see at the bottom there. And within these contexts, when you see the planet material, the social elements, and the governance elements, this is what I'm talking about: people, planet, place, prosperity. Behind each of key areas of materiality is a series of guidance materials to help support the industry. We are working towards establishing a net positive hospitality academy with partners around the world to deliver that program with our various post-secondary educational institutions that will help deliver this. And again, to hit scale. This is an important part. We have to hit scale to get across the world. And we're also working very closely with the various hotel associations in the respective jurisdictions, again, to get this information in the hands of each of their members.
Just to come back to your reference to Booking.com, one of the things I'm excited about by that, and obviously lots of small hotels particularly grieve about the amount of commission that they pay to Booking.com, but the reality now is lots of hotels are coming out and telling us what they're doing, and they're being very specific. So now if I book through Booking.com and I go to that hotel and the temperature is down at 13 degrees, there's a reasonable chance that I can get compensation for having been missold. In the certification system, that was never possible. This, I think, is a massive game changer, Glenn. It's going to change the way consumers see the opportunity to get money back when people miss out, basically.
Greenwashing is the worst thing that could happen at this case, and so we need to be held to account. And this is what's one of those methods that are happening in the UK. We're going to see that type of thing go around the world. I'm certain of that. And we have to live up to the high standard that we say we live up to. But I will say, I meet the folks, Patrick and I meet the members of the Alliance. There is a strong commitment within that membership community to do the right thing. And they want to do the right thing, and they're working towards that. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of hotels around the world to get there, but you're dead right. Greenwashing would undermine everything that we do.
And we're seeing this massive growth now of over-tourism, particularly in Europe, but not only in Europe, where different destinations are talking about capping visitor numbers, capping the numbers of hotel beds in the destinations. There's a lot of sense of tourism isn't putting back enough to justify the crowding and the other problems that come with it.
Well, in 2018, the Oxford Dictionary word of the year was over-tourism. Yeah. And so the industry was starting to get really called out for its management. Then the pandemic comes along, and everybody had to rethink. Coming out of that pandemic, people are thinking about being more sustainable as properties and as companies. My worry is did we learn anything from that experience? I think we have. I say that because of the great growth that we have in the Alliance. But we have to take strong management decisions in order not to get over-tourism conversation again. That could be the worst thing. And the reason for that happened was we were only looking at the kind of metrics we were looking at was, occupancy rates, GDP, revenue generation, and not looking at the costs associated with achieving any of those things. And that resulted in us developing sort of this industrial model that would only achieve over-tourism. And so we must look at more metrics like this that are on this screen in consideration of what success means, and have that part of the boardroom conversation. And I would say that is happening now more than ever before.
I don't disagree with any of that, Glenn, obviously, but I think there's another dimension to it, which is that a lot of destinations suddenly realised how wonderful it was when the tourists weren't there. And that's partly what's driven the over-tourism agenda now, and I don't think it's going to go away. I'd also say it isn't just the fault of the hotels being worried about occupancy that's caused the problem. I think UNWTO, with the total focus on the number of arrivals, and particularly international arrivals, often driven by governments concerned about foreign exchange earnings, has ignored the more important question, which is yield. So we're seeing more people arriving for shorter periods of time, which doesn't necessarily benefit local communities. We need to get away from measuring it in terms of arrivals and look at it in terms of visitor nights and yield and who's benefiting. One last slide, and then I'm going to come to the floor for some questions. Glenn, do you just want to explain why you signed this?
Well, I would say that we were very honored and proud to be asked to sign the Responsible Tourism Charter. We analyzed it word for word. We feel very strongly and passionately about this notion of giving back more than you take, which lines up beautifully with regenerative thinking and outlined within your Responsible Tourism Charter. So we were very honored and proud to be a part of that signing ceremony at a very appropriate location where they signed the Magna Carta way back in the day. So it was a very, very important message that we as an industry, again, want to set a market signal that we have come of age and want to take bolder action. We signed the Glasgow Declaration through the UNWTO. We've been part of the Terra Carta, which is part of the Sustainable Markets Initiatives and King Charles's initiative, and now, of course, the Responsible Tourism Charter. Again, it's making those commitments, because if we as an industry don't make commitments, we're just talking. And so we want to be able to showcase that we are ready to take that action and live up to it and be able to be accountable for it.
So now the test will be the reporting, Ron.
That's the fun part. That's what Patrick, he loves to be reporting.
I'm pleased to hear it. Who's got the first question? You could say your name and who you are and then the question.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Marcela Monroy, and I work in ProColombia, the Trade and Tourism Board of Colombia. You mentioned a very interesting subject for us, which is supply chain, and I would like to know if you can just elaborate further on how the Alliance or the members, what type of actions are they taking in that matter. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, for the first time, we're establishing a standing committee on supply chain. We've had a number of companies join us that are directly, not just in the hotel business, but are within the value chain, that are within the supply chain procurement process. And right now, we're piloting an initiative in 9 countries in Africa on supply chain. So what we're doing is educating the hotelier to decide and to purchase local and how to do that. But more importantly, we're educating the local manufacturers of the producers that are in the community on what the needs of the hotel companies are, where the demands are, how fast they need their product by, so that they can buy it local and not think they have to buy it somewhere else because it comes faster. So that is happening as we speak, and those are the kind of messages we are doing, but there's a lot of work to be done. One of the other areas is we have a carbon measurement tool, and it's the most used tool in the world by the hotel industry. But right now we're looking at adding scope 3 to the measurement, which is looking at the value chain, measuring that aspect of each purchase, all the embedded and embodied carbon. And my God, I've learned so many acronyms since I've been in this job in 10 months. But it is important that we have to be seen as I say, a contributor to the community. And that's what we see as a net positive thinking, is purchasing from the community, contributing to the community, being involved in the community. And that's where the supply chain conversation will be a big part of our work in the next 5 years. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there another question for Glenn? Thanks, Jason.
Hey Glenn, hi. That was a lovely presentation. Thank you very much. I love the whole sequence as you had in the net positivity and how you climb up from a negative level to a net positivity. But then I come from the non-profit segment. I head a foundation that's called the Faisal and Shabana Foundation. My name is Joseph. Now coming from a charity, a non-profit entity as the SHA, and working with for-profit entities which are all looking at for-profit. Now end of the day, all the members would of course be looking at how we are going to kind of bring about the net positivity component there. But then the process you might take might be kind of long stretched. For example, the people who are looking at profits, naturally the return on investment is very high, whereas from the alliance, the local economy, sustainability, all that is component. Now there is always a gap in terms of the timeline as to what might get achieved in the short term and a long term. So how does the alliance respond to that to the members?
Well, big example.
Can I just add to that? How much time do you think there really is to get this going properly?
Now. There's no better time to do it than right now. And I will say that one of the areas of focus is financing the transition, because there's a huge chasm there. It's like the deepest gorge you can imagine to get from here to there because of the financial cost of getting there. When we get to the other side, they'll make more money, be more profitable. There's no question about all the indicators are there. They'll be able to attract the employee of the future. They'll be able to retain the employee of the future by these new models. But getting there is a big difficulty. And one of the powers of the Alliance is being able to work together to group purchase green energy, for example, through PPAs, partnered power agreements. Individual companies wouldn't have electric power volume in order to get those kind of rates on the green energy side. But as a collective, they absolutely can. So through the Alliance, that'll be one of the activities that will be able to finance that transition, because it will drive the price down for green energy for these properties. And that's what we're going to see more of, is more group buying of effort to drive that and get over the hump. And then we do have to be much more creative in our financial models. And we'll be looking with partners like yourself to see how we get there in terms of how we can finance the difficult journey ahead. And I will say the big area is, of course, the banking industry themselves. And I will say the banking industry is driving a lot of change. They're expecting more from the companies they invest in because they don't want to have stagnant assets by 2030 and 2050 because those properties didn't do the right thing at a right time. And so they're not making investments unless that property is showing those positive efforts. So again, we're trying to be more market ready so that they can get the investment capital they need to make that transition. And so it's a bit of a journey, but I know you respect that as well in your work, and we look forward to working with you.